go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of ASCII Anything presented by Moser Consulting. I'm your host, Angel Leon, Moser's Director of Personnel. We're glad that you're with us for this episode of ASCII Anything because today we're going to be discussing a special Red Hat event that Moser helped host here recently. During this engaging podcast-style session, Tom Simmons from Red Hat is joining a panel of Moser experts that includes Shaun McAdams, Tom McGuinness, and Matt Wren, to discuss ways that Red Hat can help you gain a competitive advantage in the cloud and optimize your IT spending, including cloud optimization strategies, real-world cost savings, and open source innovation. If you're a business leader or IT professional who's seeking actionable insights, then this episode is for you. Let's go ahead and take a listen to the Red Hat Advantage event.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Shaun McAdams. I'm one of the vice presidents here with Moser Consulting. Appreciate everybody joining us today for this special live session with Red Hat. We're going to be discussing the Red Hat Advantage, discovering competitive advantages and savings. Before I get into that and introduce the panelists, just a few logistic notes. We do want this to be an interactive session. And so I want you guys to be verbose in chat. That's where you can ask a lot of your questions. Those will be filtered out and then sent to me so that we can engage the panelists with those particular questions. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about the Red Hat Advantage, cloud optimization, storage, some real world cost savings, and obviously diving into some open source innovation. There's also a poll. The poll says, what topics would you like to see presentations on? And so we want you to obviously go in, fill out that. At the end of that, for those people who are interactive, there's a giveaway for some translation earbuds. And so Moser will be reaching out to those people that, help make this a great session and participate. With all of that said, let's get into a little bit of introduction. So if I can, Tom Simmons, let's start with you from Red Hat.
Thank you. Appreciate the intro. My name's Tom Simmons. I'm a director in Red Hat's business value practice. What does that actually mean? So what we do is we actually help our customers justify an investment in technology. So we help our customers really align their business goals to the IT that they're going to procure. And then we work with partners like Moser that when we go into a customer together, we say, hey, what are you trying to do? How does Red Hat plus Moser actually help solve your problem? So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Matt?
Thanks, Shaun. Matt Wren, also one of the vice presidents here that handles growth and procurement services. I've actually was fortunate enough to start the Red Hat partnership back in 2015. So Tom and I have known each other for a few years, had some good stories and good jokes that if you see us in person, we'll tell you about.
And Tom.
Hi, my name is Tom McGuinness. I'm a senior consultant here at Moser Consulting, and I've been a Linux systems engineer for over 5 years now, and I've been working on Linux systems fairly exclusively for the last, it's now coming up on 15 years. So, looking forward to this.
I appreciate that. Hey, Tom, you mentioned a little bit about what business value was at Red Hat. I'm kind of interested, for the audience to learn. How did, Red Hat sort of identify that as a need? How did it kind of come about? And maybe dig into a little bit more about what you guys are trying to accomplish as the director of business value.
When we look at Red Hat, really at its core, we're an engineering company. We support the open source technologies that go on. So there's development going on around the world. And what Red Hat did is they started investing in that group. So the first thing that actually came about was Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So the world was always Unix and Windows, and there had to be an alternative, and people were looking for a cheaper alternative. But they didn't want to go with pure free. So like, hey, there's this Linux thing out there, but there's also a company that supported it. And that's really how Red Hat evolved. We started doing that around automation. We started doing around Kubernetes and containerization. But where things started to change as these solutions became more complex, our customers are like, well, I know what you do, but how do you really help us? And that's really how the business value practice came about, because really, let's take a step back. What are you trying to do first? Let's start with that. What are your business initiatives? And then we tie the technology to that. So one, we help tie the technology investments to the business goals. Then it's what we also heard from our customers is, I don't know how to message this to my directors and my VPs to get approval for our project. So then we started helping our customers build that narrative of, hey, where are you today? Where are you trying to get to? And how do we help you along the way? And how do our partners like Moser help you along the way? So we also help get sponsorship and project funding approval, which is always a challenge for a lot of people in the IT org because you're fighting for the same dollars as others. And then finally, the newest piece of the business is what we call value realization. What we'll do is go back with Moser and say, hey, this is what you wanted to do. Here's what you ended up doing. Let's capture the value that you're getting around that. And one of the ones we see a lot of that is around automation, because then we can say, hey, these were the number of manual tasks you had to do in the past. This is what's been automated. You've been able to reduce risk because you have an automated platform that helps remediate any issues you have on the security side. So just for a quick recap, we help tie the technology to the business goals. We help articulate the vision by creating that narrative and getting funding approval. And then the third piece is, hey, let's go back and talk about what value did you realize. So now you have more credibility when you want to work on your next project.
I think we all agree that business needs to be the main driver for any type of continuous improvement or strategic improvement, of which, IT initiatives should kind of roll up under and support. I'm a little bit interested, just to piggyback on, what you do. What's the best way for either current or potential consumers of Red Hat to engage in the business value conversation?
So we always prefer to get engaged earlier. So what we will do is work with our account teams just to help them. Again, we have a lot of people that really came from a technology background, and I will say our stuff is really good. Our Red Hat, what we put in the market is great, but we come at it from a speeds and feeds of like, hey, containers allows you to do this, or AAP helps you, but getting back to the why. So we work with our customers and our team early on to say, why do you want to do this? Because a lot of times that'll tell us, is there enough payback that your company will want to invest in that particular project? Because if something only happens to one or two people, that's maybe a pain for you, but for an organization like, hey, that's not worth our investment. We help put that narrative together to say, hey, if you help me fix this, I can then work on other projects that are part of our backlog. So again, it's really getting to the why, and that helps both the customer, our partners, and Red Hat to say, now we know where we can help take you. And this is where, especially our partnership with Moser is, now how do we get from point A to point B? We're the platform, but how will you help customers do that? That's where our partnership with Moser really shines.
And I want to get to there in a minute. I'm going to ask Matt a question. Before I do that, for those that are listening in the chat, I'm kind of interested. What are kind of, the most common challenges that you guys are currently experiencing? And we can list those out. We might go back through and review them, maybe talk specifically about how we're trying to overcome some of those specific implementation challenges. Matt, tell me a little bit about kind of the work we do so the audience knows around Red Hat from a professional services and procurement perspective.
Yeah, and it's very interesting when Tom talks about business value, because as a consulting company, we have to have the best business value. From Shaun McAdams here into a few others that we do VCIO services. And there's organizations that we work with that at the end of the day may or may not care about what tech stack is in their environment. They just want to make sure that it works and it meets their 1, 3, 5-year plans that they have. So that's where we potentially can utilize just different technologies from our partners, especially with Red Hat. Are we doing the right tech? And are we talking about containerization? Are we moving them to the cloud? Are we doing automation plans with Ansible automation platform? But from 2015 to now, we first were just a consulting company. We've done maybe over 100 different consulting engagements on Red Hat paper, where we were partnered with Red Hat, and we went to some very large customers from a commercial, from a SLED, which is state local education departments, and as well as the federal side of things, to do Ansible, to do OpenShift, to do RHEL, also do now OpenShift Vert, which is a big topic that Tom will talk a little bit about. But from a procurement side of things, there's two type of procurement organizations. A lot of people call them VARs or resellers, and there's ones that add value and they're ones that push paper. So are they there just doing transactions? Are they just making sure that you have Red Hat within your environment, so they're putting a cost on it and you're buying it from them? And then Red Hat also then has partners that advanced partners, premium partners, things like that, where they can also do the consulting, where we can actually offer a little bit more of a discount than some of the other partners can, just because we're there to add value to that, give them different webinars, give them different things that they can do that maybe other organizations that are reselling them don't have.
Yeah, I really appreciate it if you put yourself in the customer's shoes, which I think a lot of us do. If you're engaging in a conversation and you only come from a product mindset, then they might say, oh, you're trying to specifically push a certain product. Or if you're only coming from Moser's perspective, from a professional services mindset, oh, you're just trying to get certain people engaged. And so I see a strong need where when you're partnered, you have both, and you're really trying to focus in on the business value for the organization. So outside of kind of those two perspectives that we would, jointly share in helping someone get to the business value, what are some of the other advantages that you guys can think of as it relates to the partnership method for engaging businesses?
Ours is a little different than other organizations. I know you were just talking about, we like to separate church and state. So the tech team, right, that we have, they go in, they talk about it because we have to be consultants. And no offense to Red Hat, but we have a lot of partners, which is what they like. They also partner with a lot of other OEMs, and there's a lot of different technologies of how they partner with AWS, they partner with Azure. There's many things. Actually, at one point, I believe Ansible automation platform, the largest consumed was Microsoft, and that used to be a running joke because Microsoft and Red Hat didn't talk as much back in the day. So it's very interesting to see of how they stack onto it. But for us is that we let the tech people do the tech, and they can actually recommend what is best for that organization. And then if they do want to procure it through us, we pass it over to the procurement team. Therefore, the engineers aren't benefiting off that. So they can't just go, if it's whatever product it is, and say, this is what they want to buy because we make more money on it. It's no, this is the best solution for you and you as your organization. Then it comes over to our procurement team to quote it.
Yeah. What about you? What about from a Red Hat perspective, Tom, do you see as other advantage to the partnership approach?
So for us, I actually did, as Matt mentioned, we date back PC. So pre-COVID, I met Matt and Ty in the Indianapolis office, and we built trust. And one of the things as an OEM, a lot of the customers don't quite trust us because we're always going to pitch Red Hat. Red Hat is always the best answer. Our reps are compensated on Red Hat. That's what we're always going to say. It's what happens when we're not in the room. Where can your customers trust the Moser team? So I've built this relationship with Matt over many years. I trust him. So when a customer talks to the partner, like, yes, Red Hat is best for you because of this, because you also have NetApp, you also have Cisco. This is how it fits in your overall architecture. We trust what Red Hat brings to the table. So it's that mutual trust between Red Hat and Moser, but even more so between what does a customer, how do they feel about Moser and their VARs? I don't want to say Moser is a VAR, but you do add the value piece into that component. So they trust you more than you ever trust an OEM, and that's where the benefit for the customer.
I kind of want to pivot a little bit to expectations for the clients that we engage, right? Because what we're basically saying is, hey, a lot of times, we have perception, we have reality. We want to get into reality. In this instance, we want to get to the actual business of it that will drive something for the organization, whether it's an improvement in how they currently do their services or maybe an enhancement, something they don't do today that they want to do. But they kind of have to be a little bit vulnerable in this conversation, right? In order to open up, because if we get to the point, our ultimate goal is to get to that point of truth. But that means also now we got to kind of submit ourselves to this truth from a business perspective. So what characteristics or requirements do you see from potential or current clients that are most successful in going through this type of a conversation?
I'll go ahead and start. So you mentioned vulnerability. That's really for us to be effective, really any organization, the customer has to be truthful with us. What are your real pains? Where do you have concerns about where you're at? And we usually see it, especially with AI right now, but even traditionally, what we've also seen is where are you at in your life cycle? So and I'll use AI as an example right now, because we see a lot in the experimentation phase. But with the ones that are successful say, hey, we don't even know where to start. We want to be educated, help teach us that. And then so we can talk about needs, capabilities, integration, what skills do you have? Or it might be, hey, we've done a lot of pilots, but we haven't had scale, we don't have success, and we don't even know how to scale it if we are successful. So we kind of see this experimentation phase going on. And again, I'm talking about AI, but this even applies to automation, it's applied to VERT, it's applied to data management. Then we get into the third one, it's how do we operationalize it? This is where we see where a lot of companies like, hey, we can do this internally, we don't need help. And oftentimes they don't have the governance and the processes set up to have a successful implementation. And then if we do get through all those three, it's like, hey, this has been great. We've had great success, but nobody's measured it. So then also they're like, what you have management come back and say, hey, you've done this project, but what's the value been recognized out of it? Did you get more applications out faster so you actually secured more revenue? Did you actually help secure our environment so there's less risk that our company is susceptible to? But then getting to the point to say, because you have less risk, your likelihood of getting hacked is lower. And the average hack, for example, in a healthcare environment is $7 million. We help our customers say, you did all these things. Here's how you mitigated risk, but here's the financial impact of doing that. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I think I do want to dig a little bit more into that regulatory compliance. But before we get there, for folks that might not be, super knowledgeable about Red Hat, about the portfolio, I'm going to ask kind of everyone to kind of chime in here. What sets Red Hat apart? It's one of the things that was on our agenda that we were going to tackle. What sets Red Hat apart, in the enterprise IT? You're the technician, Tom. So let's hear a little bit about how you respond to that technically, but what sets Red Hat apart, the enterprise IT landscape?
Well, first of all, obviously, their commitment for decades now in the FOSS world, and that's free open source software. There are a number of projects that just about every enterprise is using in some way or another that originate from Red Hat. And whether they're going for the licensed version or not, people would be amazed at the number of things that they output. Ansible can be downloaded, installed without the licensed full version. It will not have all the bells and whistles, and it will be, it is a little bit tougher to manage without that. But one can do it. It's free. That's open source. 389DS, which we're working currently with one of our clients. I don't want to name them unless I'm allowed to. Is the FOSS community version of their directory server, and directory server is really kind of their version of Active Directory. So you can you have an enterprise-backed product that goes out. It's a licensed product that they do sell and support on, but they also have the open community version of it. So what they're putting out into the ecosystem is not just for licensed money consumption. It's about building the IT infrastructure that the entire world will. And what makes Red Hat different for me, and I think I said this when we were kind of doing initial discussions on how to approach this podcast. There's a number of Linux distributions. It's almost staggering. If you go on the Wikipedia page, just click on that picture of the number of Linux distributions out there. But one of the main ones is Red Hat, and you're going to have 3 or 4 of the main channels. And Red Hat is the solid main channel, and it is America's one. This is the number one open source company for in America that is their commitment. They were the first $1 billion open source company. So those are the things that immediately popped to my mind, Shaun.
Yeah, Matt.
I think it's the community. Honestly, I mean, from the open source community to the partnership community to all the different events that Red Hat offers. Red Hat Summit to now, having customers there, having the different OEMs there, having the ISVs that integrate to them. And then also us services to a VAR side of sharing notes and talking about it, of how can we do this better for our customers? How can we do this better for each other, and how can we work with Red Hat to make things better for our customers. And having an open ear is something that Red Hat has had for the partnership we've had for almost 10 years with them, and being able to get to the leadership team. It's not, no offense to Tom whenever he was just our CAM, or no offense to Ted, but I was able, now I can talk to Stephanie, I can talk to Kevin Kennedy, I can talk to Brian Ellis, I can talk to Dr. Matt Hicks, I can talk to all the leadership team, and they're willing to hear what you have to say. And not a lot of organizations or a lot of partners have done that from that side of the fence.
Yeah, so I'll throw my 2 cents in here. So, growing up as a technologist, most of my time was spent in data and analytics. A big portion of that through 2012 and probably 2017, 2018 was big data, implementation of big data, and a lot of these distributions. And so we really loved when we did the implementations. We almost exclusively always on Rails. Now, as I transitioned and put off kind of the SA hat into leadership, the thing that I find is that sense of security and reliability, because I have a trust in a lot of the products, not just because guys like Tom, it helps them in their role and makes them more efficient. That's what I want as an IT leader, but I also just feel more safe. I'm not awake at night because of things from a security or compliance perspective into our environment. So that's just, my spill. And I think a lot of people that are in IT leadership would kind of relate to that. And if there are things that are keeping you up at night from an OS perspective, but also beyond that, right? We're here to really try to talk about optimization and automation. And so one of the key areas, and I don't know if we've solicited any feedback from the audience. If not, drop some in there so we can see kind of what tech challenges that you're facing, and we can apply what we're talking about to it. But one of the areas is definitely regulatory compliance, and so how does, Red Hat help, specifically in an ever-changing environment around security and regulations? How does Red Hat help companies adopt and mitigate those things from this year?
I think one is, I think most people know this, but the federal government does do a lot of business with Red Hat. And the federal government's supposed to be the most secure, right? And the DoD and everything else, but there is a lot of RHEL that sits within that. I think that speaks volume right there from my perspective.
Yeah, and also in one of the projects we in the last year, you can pretty much flip on FIPS enabled, get a FIPS enabled image that you can download right from Red Hat. That start your installation that way, and it's pretty much coming out of the box with all of the things and all of the boxes ticked that you need to. And FIPS is going to be way overkill for a lot of organizations. This is designed for federal government. This is designed for high security environments, and it's not to say it's absolutely perfect in terms of what you want. You still can go in there and tailor what those settings are, so that you don't necessarily have to go through every last jot detail. Fix it in the big settings and allow you to get in there.
And Tom, Simmons, sorry, I know I got two Toms there, so I got to make sure, but I don't know if it was at SCOA or if it was at Red Hat Summit. I believe that from the financial institutes, there's 99 out of 100 all use RHEL or use some type of Red Hat flavors. Am I saying that correct? Or
You're correct. So I think the topic earlier was building trust in Red Hat, and many customers around the globe have invested in Red Hat Enterprise Linux. That was like the first thing from the Red Hat side. And then it's grown since then. But touching back on what the other Tom was saying in terms of compliance, what we're starting to see, especially as we change administrations, or just changes in policies and there's changes in regulations. And what we're starting to see is an investment in something they call policy as code. Instead of having all your policies built in binders, you're actually building that into your code. So when policy changes, and I'll use an example. So anybody that's ever been in healthcare, you have something called prior authorization. So you go to the hospital, they check out Matt, and they're like, Matt probably needs an MRI. There's a process that goes, and it's called prior authorization. Like, can we give Matt an MRI? Does he meet the qualifications? Does Moser have the insurance to do that? That used to be able to take weeks. And that now has moved down to, I think it's 96 hours. You have to get approval or rejection, and why that rejection. So one of the things we're working with some healthcare providers, it says, this is the new rule from CMS. We built that into the code to say when this is kicked off, there's time frame built into it and what the process is and how it has to go back to the hospital. So you're starting to see this change from, hey, there's this human intervention to now we're moving more to this idea of, again, called policy as code, and then how do we enforce it? And that's where our platform of both OpenShift, not to get too into the platform side, but OpenShift allows us to build these containerized applications, but also Ansible allowing us to deploy those quickly when regulations change. And we see it a lot around healthcare. We're seeing a lot around the financial services because some things are being rolled back. It's like, how do we pull that out of what we had in our systems before to meet the new current regulations?
Yeah, and I think in open source, what we see is it's kind of built on the foundation, right? That's sort of at the foundation of the concept of open source. And the administration and automation of those things is a strong value proposition, obviously, for Red Hat. I know, Tom, you kind of wanted to, defer a little bit from the tech for a sec, or for a minute, but I kind of want to pull us back just for a second in two ways. One, just so the audience and everyone understands from the IT organization perspective, and then I want to talk a little bit about AI because I think that that's something that everybody is sort of interested in. Not AI, not data scientists, but from an operational or a development perspective. Can you tell us a little bit about the implementation of either OpenShift or ASCII for IT and operations?
Well, you kind of baited the hook there on AI. You mind if I digress a little bit from what you were talking about? Because one of the things that I saw recently at a presentation for RHEL 10 that's coming out soon, that is going to have AI a connection built in. So every licensed RHEL should get RHEL 10, and this will roll back and also to RHEL 9. You will have the ability to query Watson back in from the command line to get questions and answers answered from the most mature artificial intelligence in the world present, Watson, and ask it questions relating to problems you are having right then, right now in your Linux system, in your Red Hat Linux system, and specifically query it, and it will provide you information and guidance and some kind of how-tos if you're hitting some areas that are troublesome, and even offer up configuration files, scripts, etc., to help you through those immediate problems. And that's with every RHEL version, not even hitting on OpenShift and Ansible. In terms of OpenShift and Ansible with AI, obviously containerization is going to be key as we as a culture, as we as a race, people, nation, business, whatever, move into this era of artificial intelligence, because a lot of the workload of these big AIs is going to be through some kind of containerization, some kind of where the central AI could spin up the agent it needs to solve a problem, explore an example or possibility. And OpenShift is going to be key with that. That is their implementation, Red Hat's implementation. It's not just Kubernetes; it's built around Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is installed in it, and it is the core, if you will, of the orchestration for containers. But what Red Hat builds around it is a whole several layers of infrastructure and interoperability that do not come with the core Kubernetes. Another client, they're going with the Red Hat OpenShift model because they're finding out that they're hitting some licensing restrictions on the open source, on the FOSS version. So OpenShift will allow them to expand and provide security patching, monitoring, and generally a larger sense of safety through Red Hat.
Matt or Tommy, you want anything to add, at least as it relates to IT or AI conversation?
I mean, it's funny whenever you, like, the first thing they said at Summit this year was like, or last year was like, yes, we're going to talk about AI. Everybody's talking about AI. But to see last year, the year before, but to have the VPSLs come up and start coding because it was utilizing AI, who's never coded before, right? I know we used to run Ansible labs, and it was a running joke, if I could get it stood up before somebody else, that's not a good scenario for your organization, but that was many years ago. But to see that, like, it was the way that he was like talking pirate, and like that's the way it coded back to you. So it was very interesting to see the evolution of how this is trending, the newest way of AI, and how it's going to change moving forward.
What are businesses sort of engaging you as it relates to the conversation around AI and Red Hat?
Interesting question, because here's the challenge I see around AI today is when Red Hat's brought in, we're usually being brought in because the data scientists, they're like, hey, we need an on-premise environment. We want to run AI on-prem. Well, one of the things we're noticing is IT's not in the room. So it's almost like organizations are letting these data scientists and the business side choose the tools, what models they're going to use, how they're going to train the models. And when we get there, we're like, where's IT? And they're like, we want to move faster than that. I'm like, I get what you're saying, but somewhere along the line, you have to operationalize this with all the things that a normal application platform has. It has to have governance, it has to have security, it has lifecycle management. And you and this data scientist, that's not what you do. So the key for us is, and I had this conversation with both Cisco and NetApp not too long ago, and it's how do we help IT make themselves relevant in the AI conversation? So we've been coaching that team to say, here's how you're going to talk about, because your data is in NetApp or Portworx. You're like, why is that relevant to that team? You've got to be able to communicate that here's our data structure, here's how we protect it. That's how it's going to go into your AI component. So we talk to the data scientists like, you need to talk to IT, but we're also talking to IT to say, this is how you make yourselves relevant in this discussion. And once you want to be in there at the very beginning, you want to be critical to this because you have the data, but then the operational side to say, this is how it's going to work, because as much as everybody loves to say AI, at the end of the day, it's really a complex application that needs to be managed like any other application in your organization.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what I'm hearing from a conversation that you have with businesses, at least IT is behind in how they approach the delivery of IT, and that it's not automated. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, they're going to go somewhere else because they look at how IT operates, and the model in which they operate isn't going to deliver the business value. So we're going to go over and we're going to do this. And you're basically saying, hey, I've got to go back and train IT. That number one, let's look at what that root cause is and how you're delivering IT functionality, because the business is recognizing you're not doing even your service the way that they want to do their service, because at the end of the day, these are two services. And the second thing is that the underlying architecture that would obviously deliver analytic products and then also AI as an analytic product isn't being recognized as sort of an IT owned architecture, or that it doesn't exist. So that's a very, very interesting remark there I see. And I think that's a challenge to all of us that are on here in IT. That if we want to overcome that we need to be looking at how we're delivering our service and aligning it into, I mean, to me, when you went to, hey, we're seeing policy as code, you see that shift left into, past infrastructure, past all these things, configuration into these common business things. Like, we're looking at automating all of those things. And if IT isn't doing, if they're not approaching their services in that way, then sure, the business could look at them and make the assumption they're not the right business partner to us because they're not delivering their foundational services the way we would want to.
I was going to add a little bit to what the other Tom said. So he's talking about RHEL 10. It's like, there's updates in RHEL 10 and the security platform. What we're telling IT organizations that have had RHEL or maybe even Ansible, it's like everything you have is really a foundation for both on-premises and cloud-based platform for AI. So what we do is we coach the AI, like you have a lot of the foundations already, and you have the security, and you're building on top of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and you're using Ansible for automation. Now you're putting the next layer on, which is Red Hat OpenShift AI, to say, hey, our platform for training, for inference servers and all that is going to be OpenShift, but it inherits all the security from the bottom up from the RHEL environment. Because what we're seeing from the data science, they're like, I'm going to Microsoft or I'm going to Google and I'm just going to spin this up. And you're like, yeah, but where's the data? And they're like, well, our data is on premises. We have it in this database or we have it in like, well, the cost of doing that is prohibitive for your organization. You want the flexibility to run that workload wherever you want it to run. So most of your data is on premises and that's where you're testing against. Financially, it probably makes sense to do it on premises. You just didn't know you had all the foundation already to support that environment. And if you want to run in the cloud, you're like, it's the exact same environment. I can run that workload wherever I want because the foundation is the same between the two.
Because before I kind of go into I really want us to dive into obviously AWS private the marketplace benefits. Well, some independent bullets, independent research specific to Red Hat, and kind of get your guys' take on this, and then maybe also in real world type of implementation. Let's see, independent research, 210% return on investment over 3 years in using Red Hat. Around how they service their IT. 60% developer and IT operation times. 20% data science efficiency gains because we're giving them more time to focus on what they're doing, not delivering code and things. The environment. This is OS related. 76% less downtime or downtime reduction using RHEL products, specifically with Red Hat. 30% faster development life cycles and implementation of the code delivery aspects for these particular tools. I know at some point all of you have lived some portion of that or some evidence of engaging a business. I'm kind of just interested in your sort of real world success story.
Before I ramble on, I'll give you a chance, Matt.
I honestly think the interesting fact on it, just for years, it's always been infrastructure. But seeing them highlight some of the things that they do within cars now and development piece of that is really cool to kind of see that 60% is also development. So I think that's just real world experience. We have organizations that the first time that they bring in because you have to buy Ansible nodes by 100 at a time, that they buy their first 100, and the only time it goes successful is actually they get implemented. There's so many that'll buy too many nodes. They'll buy maybe 600 to 700, and they're only using 300. But why are they only using 300? Is because they haven't talked to all the different businesses. They haven't talked to the server team. They haven't talked to the network team, security team, development team, all across the board, and that's where it becomes successful for the organization.
And as you're talking, I had an anecdote I wanted to share from something you said earlier. So this perfectly dovetails into that. You're talking about saving time on downtime. The personnel you put to managing something when it's breaking. And this RHEL has almost a bulletproof reliability. And this is anecdotal, but I saw it. Literally, it was on the server. I'm like, do you mind if I take a screenshot of this? And it was the uptime of one server that we're looking at for a potential client. This system had been up without a reboot, without any patching, which we don't recommend. But the fact that you see something like this, it was a few hours shy of 7 years operation. The system had been running for 7 years without a reboot. My God, the amount of savings. That thing was practically printing money. When you think about the fact that it was just so reliable and never had a problem, and it did the job and was serving up what it was doing, and nobody paid attention to it. Here's this little engine that could, this little one single VM chugging it out, and 7 years later. So I think about stuff like that. That to me, that's the best story I can give you on that, which is like, wow, how much money did that thing make you? Because it just was there and it was just doing its job. I always say this, one of my main goals to bring to my clients when we do work is I want to make it boring. I want to deliver boring. Now, that might not be what Moser wants to deliver, but I want it to be boring, because if it's boring, that means things are running right. Things are running as they should. I want it to be a cakewalk because, and we're always going to have emergencies. There's always going to be something we didn't anticipate. A fuse blows out. Who knows? A duct lands wrong on a power line and suddenly, there's a problem. But if we're doing our jobs great and well, it's going to be sleepy and boring, reliable. You turn it on, you don't think of where the power comes from. It's just magically the lights happen. I think that one of the things that a product like RHEL brings is that at 7 years, turn on the lights, bulb works. You don't need to know why. Just done.
Tom, you hear all of those particular stats and you live it. You're at Red Hat. This becomes something that you're probably just used to seeing. When you engage businesses in first conversations, knowing all of those things, right? Knowing all the prior success stories, seeing all that material, what's sort of that low hanging fruit or those items that really excite you first when you engage with a customer that doesn't know anything or hasn't realized any of the potential that the platform could bring?
I'll start with one. It's and I think Matt mentioned this earlier. It's really around automation. That is the fastest time to value of, and I came from Samsung. I've been in IBM. I've been in others. It's one of the fastest time to values we've seen. And when customers build like a center of excellence around that and bring in network and the data center and other storage, that's when they really start to see the value. But what a lot of our IT customers don't do is they don't come back and capture it. They'll say, hey, it was really great. Like, yes, but there are things you did. You have applications being deployed faster, so faster time to revenue. You have lower costs because you're more efficient use of your infrastructure. And sometimes it's even about power consumption because you're putting your provisioning, deprovisioning devices. That goes back to cost savings. And those customers have climate initiatives to say, I want to reduce my power. That's a cost, but it's also part of your strategic initiative. So what we'll do is help that group say, let's benchmark where you were in terms of how many processes were automated, your mean time to resolution, how long were your devices at risk at your edge devices, capturing all that, putting that together. So when they have their annual review or maybe semi-year review, you can point to this as a success story to say, we invested in Ansible automation platform. Here was the cost benefits, but maybe even from a job satisfaction to say, I used to toil on these manual processes for hours and hours and hours. Now it's automated. I'm focusing on these other things that we can no longer get to. That's where when our team comes in to do, and it's again more on the value realization, say, there's a lot of quantifiable benefits you have here that helps your story. And we did it it was a health payer, and we did a follow-up value realization, and the person that led that project got promoted. And I was able to say, did this project help you get promoted? And he's like, Tom, I can absolutely say this helped me get promoted. I was a team lead. Now I got promoted in the organization.
And I kind of correlate automation to, an organization having this continuous improvement process. I'm kind of interested from those that are listening, how many of you have, a continuous improvement process that's kind of pushed from the top down, right? The expectation from the executive leadership within the team is that we're going to follow this particular process that's going to, help, push things forward of which is, automation. So let me know in the chat, do you guys have a automation or a continuous improvement process already in place? All right, let's switch to how we go get Red Hat, how we go get these things. So what is kind of, the advantage, specifically let's talk about AWS, it's on here, the AWS marketplace and procuring Red Hat, other OEMs through that.
Yeah, from an AWS perspective, you have things you can buy through Marketplace, which you can buy all products on there, but you can also buy a lot of OEMs. A lot of times from an AWS perspective, you have a certain amount of spend. You have to get AWS and it's fit or lose it type of. So if you have to spend $100,000, you only get to 80,000. Well, you left $20,000 on the table you didn't pay for. Well, with utilizing the marketplace, you can buy Red Hats, all flavors on there. But what it also does, and not a lot of people know, is you're able to get additional discounts from AWS. We've worked with some EDU clients, we've worked with commercial clients, and we also spoke with some federal clients on doing this, where they spent, say, $200,000 and they got a $1,500 credit from AWS for purchasing it. And it costs the exact same to purchase it through. So they had an advantage towards that. I know they're doing things like that with Azure. There's a little bit more. AWS is just a little bit more mature from a marketplace standpoint of buying, but you can do it on Azure. But from a partner standpoint, 95% of Red Hat customers have to buy through a partner. Red Hat is partner focused. And there's some special cases where they do get to go direct, but they have very many. And us coming in, like I talked about, to give the webinars, to give talks, and partner with your distributor, partner with the OEMs there, that they can give more knowledge to save money that way too. But yeah, AWS, if you're not utilizing it and you're interested in how to utilize it, feel free to reach out to me or procurement@moserit.com, and one of somebody on the team can answer those questions for you.
And it wasn't not been that long ago. And I'm gonna hopefully some of our other partners aren't going to listen to this, but I'm going to go here. There was an acquisition that took place from Broadcom, and it kind of sent a little waves through, the industry from a virtualization perspective. Well, I'm kind of interested because there might be people tuning in, because on our sessions we kind of pointed this out, VMware alternative. So, let's explain a little bit about what that looks like, maybe from a Red Hat perspective.
Well, and I would also defer to the other Tom.
Yep.
We have to give ourselves numbers or something. I'll be Tom 2 and I'll be Tom 1. This. I was surprised to find this out. I'm actually the VMware subject matter expert at Moser, and I'm a big fan of it. I think it's a great product. It is the top of the tier, but with that acquisition from Broadcom, the license changes have they've really cut out a huge swath of their previous market, and this is really an advantage to companies like Red Hat that offer competing products. They have OpenShift. They have OpenShift virtualization, which, unlike VMware, OpenShift and OpenShift virtualization evolved from the OpenStack project, from Red Hat's OpenStack, and it had been built with both VMs and containers in the DNA. It wasn't a bolt-on. Now, for container use inside of a VMware environment, there's ESXi VMware. That's the standard, core VMware. But they kind of bolted on this Tanzu, and it's good. I mean, you can get in there, but you're now almost out of reach. It's stratospheric to be able to afford to do any decently sized VMware stack. Whereas with Red Hat, you've got OpenShift and OpenShift Vert, which, as I said, an evolution of KVM, an evolution of OpenStack, virtualization and containerization built in side by side in the D. That product is available to clients. They can start it on either side of the fence and add whatever they need later. And the hooks are already in. Everything's already built to be properly kind of attached to it, or you can go the full route. You can do both at the same time and be managing your stacks with both containerization and virtualization in one suite.
Have you seen that come up, Tom, just because of that acquisition and stuff as sort of in your, conversations around business of you, but really analyzing the investments that the company is making in managing their virtual environments or containerization?
100%. So I'd say probably about a third of our customers are, we want an alternative to VMware. We just don't know what the future holds. So some, for example, and I'm not great on they have VVF and Broadcom's like, yeah, we're doing away with that. You have to do VCF. And the cost impact to an organization is pretty substantial. But the second is, there's another healthcare provider, and they're like, we are already at the margins because we have a lot of Medicaid and Medicare patients. To have this cost increase changes our whole business. How do we react to the market? How do we get out of this Broadcom story? And it's not the easiest, but where Tom was going, I think spot on. It's like, you want to get off of VMware. I get that. And you have this virtual, but you're also innovating at the same time. So, and you're talking about containers. You're only talking about just doing the virtualization. Where does that leave the other side of the business? And Shaun, I think you mentioned earlier, it's like, you got to continue to innovate. Like, you solved one problem, but all your new business is going to be containerized. You want to build it that way. And that's a different environment. So where we've seen success, us and our partners, is, if it's a VMware to VMware pure discussion, a lot of times we'll see Nutanix. They're like, yeah, we do pretty much everything the same that VMware did. Like, great, but what people are asking you for new applications, what are you going to do there? Are you just going to shut down development for a year to a year and a half while you work on your VMware environment? No, you want to do that in parallel. I get that's risk, but that's where like a Moser comes in, like, how do we help you de-risk this? Because we'll put a plan in place for a migration for your VMs, but we'll also start to get your platform ready for the net new development that you're looking at.
Piggyback on that, I think that it's the unknown. We've talked to, the unknown cost, unknown pricing. One thing that just happened, we're working on another deal with an organization where Lenovo's paired with Broadcom VMware. Well, after September 15th, you can't quote that. You have to go directly. So it's how they're doing the direct business versus through the partnerships, and the customers not knowing what their price increases are going to be or how it's going to affect them is scary, because there's just so much they have relied on. VM is a great product. We have many organizations that use VMware, and we support their environments, and it does a phenomenal job. But I think, with the acquisition, has opened up some doors for the Red Hats and the other organizations to look at different.
Awesome. Well, we have 5 minutes left. And so what I want to do is, obviously this will end up out somewhere on the interwebs. And we might have, some boomerang listeners coming to listen to this again. They might share it. Obviously, we might get some new listeners. And I think one of the best ways to really close is kind of go back to that business value conversation. Whether, they're a new potential partner to Red Hat and Red Hat Solutions, or they're, already using it, kind of goes back to what Tom had, stated. Going beyond just maybe that initial use case, what's sort of the best way, Tom, for whether it's a new or even a current? Because I don't know how many current Red Hat clients really engage back into Red Hat and into your organization to really, what other things can we do from a Red Hat perspective? What's the best way of trying to engage and start those conversations?
One, I always think the best way is through a partner. And this is where I think Moser, because I talked a little bit earlier about trust. We are the OEM, and just trust in OEMs is never going to be as high as it is when you have local resources like your Moser team. That's where you start with. Because one of the things that's both good and bad about Red Hat, and kind of going back what Tom was saying, RHEL just works. So when we go talk to customers, like, I don't need to talk to you, your stuff works. I'm like, yes, but we want to build upon that. We want to build on the foundation. So I think the big key is go talk to your representative, your sales reps at Moser to say, hey, and really, Shaun, going back to what you were saying as well, it's like being vulnerable. It's like, what's going on in the market? I don't know everything. Can you help guide me? And working with the people you trust to go do that. And then they'll bring us in to say, hey, we've had a lot of success with Red Hat, or we're thinking about expanding into new areas. The business value team then come help and either help you justify the early part or come back at the end to say, hey, you've already invested in Red Hat. Let's help prove the value that you actually were able to generate.
Appreciate that, Tom. For those that are listening and new to Moser, one of the ways we do it, we have this 6Ds framework that we use a lot across Moser. The first 6 of those are discovery phase, and we call it discover, dream, design. The idea is that we are trying to put in a lot of those business needs, right, into discover, figuring out what the organization wants, and then having a collaborative conversation with dream and what's the right solution to order to deliver this to the organization. And then develop just becomes, what do we need to do to go implement that thing we've all agreed is the great thing. So I guess I would end this also challenging Moser, Red Hat to continue driving those business conversations, but also those companies that we're engaged with, our business partners or potential partners, being a little bit vulnerable into the conversation, so that we understand exactly what you're trying to accomplish from an IT, from a business perspective, so that we can put the IT solutions. Any closing thoughts, things that you guys want to state before we end the live session?
For me, we say this in Moser, but trusted advisor all the time. Make sure you have a trusted advisor, somebody that understands the tech, that understands your business, and that can truly partner with you as an organization, and isn't just there to push paper.
Shameless plug for signing up for the Red Hat developers license, I think is what they call it. Tom, can you correct me on that when I'm wrong? If I'm wrong, you can get if you sign up at Red Hat, you don't have to pay to have an account. You get 16 RHEL licenses, and you can play with them. You can set them up as VMs if you have the space, and start experimenting with it yourself. If you're curious about it, download it, start banging it around. It's free, up to 16. You're not sitting them into production. You're good to go. So Red Hat will allow you to have up to 16 free machines, basically, and you can experiment and see what the product does.
I confirm. The only thing I change is license to subscription. That's it.
I appreciate you guys joining me today. So Matt, Tom, and Tom, thank you guys, so much. If you're watching this as a repeat run and you do have questions or something, make sure to file those in. We'll get those into the right, folks here to be able to answer. Appreciate everybody's time. Love the hat there, Tom.
I was going to say, I could be Denver Tom. He could be Indy Tom. So
there we go.
I'm Cleveland Tom, Denver Tom.
Well, when we do this again, we'll update everybody's names and we'll just introduce everybody that way. So I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you, guys.
Thanks all. Appreciate it.
Go Colts.
Thank you for listening in to this week's edition of Ask Anything, presented by Moser Consulting. We hope you enjoyed listening to our Red Hat Advantage event. Be sure to join us next time as we dive even deeper with our resident experts and explore what they're currently working on. Don't forget to share your ideas or topics with us through our social media. In the meantime, please remember to give us a rating and subscribe to our feed wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, so long, everybody.